All right, in today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to replace the injectors on a 4-cylinder Toyota Tacoma. This should be kind of moderate, little tedious process. We are going to remove the throttle body, so I would say get that gasket for the throttle body base gasket. Now, when you do get the gasket set for this at the auto parts store, it does not come out right. And if you do have a part number from the auto parts store, please comment that down below. We get the gasket from the actual dealership because trying to cross-reference a throttle body gasket, the one that we get, it always comes up as the Toyota Camry 2.4 instead of 2.7. So I just don't know what the issue is with that. Trust me, I tried a lot of cross-referencing before, but if you guys are able to find something on that, then perfect. Either that or just the local parts stores on that. Pretty much you're going to need a 10mm socket, definitely a 12mm wrench, and a 12mm socket. So just 10, 12, and that's pretty much it, and some pliers. And yeah, so let's go ahead and get the ball rolling. So if you haven't already, give it a thumbs up, comment down below if you have any questions, and hit that subscribe button for more coming videos in the future. And we're gonna go ahead and start this video right after the intro. All right, first things first, we're gonna go ahead and remove our intake box. We got a couple screws and so forth. I want to say, just depending on what model you have, but sometimes the wire harness could be connected right here, so just depending on that. We do have this little hose that's right there. We got 3 screws holding this in place. So we got one right here that's 10, that's another one that's 10, and then right over here that's another 10mm, and then we have 110 and then another 10. So for the hose clamps, we're just gonna loosen those just enough so we can sneak out the box and we can go ahead and escape that. Now for our little connector clips that's right here, we are gonna go ahead and remove this. Now this is already kind of broken as it is previously to me working on it. So what I would say is, once you lift this up, what you can do is like you can pick this out and then squeeze the little tabs. There should be like a little tab that's right there, and let's get that zoomed in real quick. So right here you can get a needle nose plier and just squeeze that in while going under. I use a pick, and I'll show you the pick that I use on that. So once you flip it up, same thing will apply to this one if there was a wire harness connected over here on that. And then we have our EGR connector just right here. This will be considered, I don't know what sensor this one is called yet, so if you know, put it in the comments. And then instead of disconnecting the hose over here, I would say disconnect it right over here at the EGR, just because it's a lot more, it's a metal instead of being a plastic, so we have a tendency to break that, and that pretty much will leave right there. Now we have our PCV hose that's right here. You just, either way, if you want to disconnect it from over here or over here, depends on your preference. I'm just gonna go ahead and take it off from here. So you lift that up, and then I'll just spin it to the side, and then we'll insert that last. And then if you're able to hear any background sounds, I'm sorry about that, but yeah, sorry. That's all I can say, is sorry about that. All right, so there's supposed to be 3 screws. Obviously only 2 come out because the previous person that worked on this over tightened the actual valve cover, and then the actual threaded part is stuck with the nut on that. So let's go ahead and loosen these. So we're gonna lift up from the throttle body first, and you're just gonna wiggle it right around. So in the meantime, you will go ahead and take this side off. So same thing, you'll just wiggle it just enough. Now the harness will go with you, and then you'll flip it over, and then you'll be able to only flip it as so much, and then from there you can actually squeeze the tabs with a pick, and I'll show you that. So you can use a pick just like this. You can get these at Harbor Freight, or you can use a flathead screwdriver too as well to help you out on that. All right, so there's a few simple ways you can either do this. One, you can either take off your ignition coil bolts, or you can just disconnect them. Now, some do have a tendency of breaking when removing. So let's go ahead and remove this ignition coil. So you push down on the clip and push towards the ignition coil, pull back, and you'll repeat that for all four. And then there we have it. Now, on the side of the valve cover, you have a harness holder. So yeah, basically you'd have these little clips that would be all around. So you'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then there should be like a 6th one right over here. And then what you do is that you can lift right up here with your pinky, pull that back. So yeah, see this one doesn't come out. You just pull that back just a little bit until the harness pops up, and you'll do that for the rest. Now, if you can't reach some, you can use your pick to pick them back, and then from there, if you close them, you might have a chance of breaking them when they compress. So just as a heads up. So once we get that, I'm just gonna roll this. Oh, and then we're gonna go ahead and take off our cam sensor just to give us a little leg room on that, and then that'll help us out with a little bit more. So we are going to be going and taking off our throttle body connector, and we will take our purge solenoid. So these little tabs you just push down, same thing right here. Maybe we could probably do this one too. So right here you have a little tab, you're just gonna push that one back, and then that'll give you a little bit more room. Let's see, I think that should be fine. And then now for the injectors. Now obviously this one's broken right here, so really can't show too much on that one, so that one's gonna get pulled back. Now for right here, for that injector, you're just gonna press down on this little tab. Now sometimes these guys can be on there pretty tight, and push down on the tab, and then push towards the injector, and then pull back. And now you're not yanking on the harness, because if you yank on the harness, you're gonna be messing up. You're gonna pull the pins back. So what I'm doing is I'm using my index finger and my thumb to pull it back. And then we'll do one more for the final, the 4th injector. All right, so that gives us a little bit more room just to kind of wiggle around. So now we're gonna go ahead and take off our throttle body. So we're gonna remove the 4 screws. You can take off the coolant hoses, but I just don't want to touch the cooling system. It's actually just cheaper and easier just to remove the gasket, because if you touch the cooling system, you open up air in the actual system and you have to bleed that out. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4 10 millimeters. One looks like an 8, but that's not the original one. They're all going to be the same length in size, so you should have nothing to worry about. And then voila, this gives us a lot more room to swing this right over. Throttle body gasket, I'll tell you, I can let you know if you can reuse it, if you can't. So I'll tell you one way to determine if it's reusable or not. If you wanted to clean your throttle body, now would be the most perfect time to clean the throttle body. Now, in the meantime, you can put a rag inside the throttle body, inside the intake, so no debris gets inside. All right, so we'll put that rag right there. And then normally you would have these little brown clips that are right here. Obviously they're not there. And when taking off the fuel lines, you are going to be having some pressure. Now the reason why I'm replacing these injectors is because they're not the correct ones and the car's misfiring, and we have 2 leaky injectors. And what I mean by leaky injectors is that they are still they are still spraying when the car's off. So they are not fully closing, they are staying partially open, and from there we are getting a misfire or a long crank no start until fuel pressure builds up, then finally we will start it up. So that's the system. And then we got some running rich P0171 and then 174, so both banks are running rich just on that sense. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and release the pressure. We're going to go ahead and pull back right here just on these parts, and then we have a yellow tab that's over here on the far closest to the firewall, and then we have the green tab that's closer to the throttle body. Let's see if you guys can see that. Yeah, you guys can see that. So I'm going to squeeze the colored tabs with my index, and then you're going to pull towards the engine, so you're going to push towards it, and then as you're squeezing the tabs you're going to pull it back. So I'm going to have the rag in the way so we don't spray any fuel in our eyes. Alright, so, and I'll go ahead and repeat that again so now you can see now that I relieve the pressure. Alright, so basically I'm going to push this guy right in until it clips, and then we're going to squeeze on both sides. You got to put some pressure and then push in towards the rail and then kind of twist out, and then that's pretty much it. And then we'll just set this one right over here. I'm going to do it under the brake lines so it doesn't flick right back into our eyes. Ask me how I know. That happened to me. Alright, so same thing. Just watch your eyes when pulling out the fuel line. Alright. And then I'm just going to put this one right over the brake hose. You might have some fuel leaking out, which is fine. It's okay if it goes over some places. Alright, so now we need to go ahead and remove our 12 millimeters. So right here is where we're going to use a wrench. Now I would recommend using a boxed end, the closed end of the actual 12. So don't take off the fuel regulator, that just makes more work for you. And then this one I'm going to go ahead and take off with the wrench. So we'll loosen up this one all the way. Once you loosen it, we're going to leave the bolt in there. We're not going to remove it. And then from here, we're going to go ahead and loosen up this 12 millimeter bolt. And that's on the fuel rail, by the way. Once you loosen that, the fuel rail will kind of just swing down just a little bit. This bolt I'm going to keep and take with me. Alright, so now we have more access to the fuel rail. So sorry if the harness is in the way, so I'm just going to grab the fuel rail. Now some injectors might stay stuck and some might come with you, so which is perfectly fine. Now we need to lift up the front of the harness because that's where we're gonna take out the actual injectors. The fuel rail. Now fuel will leak out once you remove the rail from the injectors. Now we need to sneak this out because this part hits the coolant line, and then that's what we want to keep from. That's going to keep us from taking it out. Now when working around the gas, be very extremely careful that you don't have a lighter. The vapor is the most flammable part, and we do not want a fire, so just be careful with any sparks, anything in that sort. So we're going to go ahead and remove our injectors. Now sometimes they don't normally stay in like this, they'll come out with the rail, so it'll be a little bit tedious. Alright, so we're just going to pull out each one by hand. Alright, so now right here we have fuel rail spacers. So as you can see, one's still right there and then the other one fell down. Well, this one that fell down, I don't want to lose it. this right here, I would put it right back over here on its spot. So that's where they go. So these little, just keep an eye on these. What you can do to hold those in place, you can either put some silicone that will really keep them in there, which I'm going to go ahead and apply right now. I'll just put a little dab of silicone on there just so we can actually keep that in place. So here's my little 2 dabs right there. If I can get that to focus. So here we have it, and then we're just gonna go ahead and slap this right on where it goes, and then we'll just keep that right there, and then we'll let the silicone cure just for a little bit. All right, so the injectors that we pulled off, we're putting back the original ones on until we get some new ones, but just keep in mind, where's the part number? So here is the part number. You need to make sure that these match. So 23 250 00010. So these aren't the correct ones. They probably have a different spray on that. And so the tip, no, the tip's not long. So for this one, let's see if I can get that to focus. We got, let me clean these up real quick. So right there, this is the part number that we need for this one. If you want to pause it, you're more than welcome to pause it. It's 23 250-75 100. So, all right. Now, before installing these, we actually need to lubricate these O-rings on all these injectors. Because if you don't lubricate them, guess what's going to happen? You're going to have the injector O-ring roll back, and you're going to have a fuel leak. So I'm using dielectric grease. Any grease works, just so you know. So we'll just get a little dab and then squeeze right here, and then all I want to do is just actually lubricate just the actual O-ring. Now just keep the grease from going inside the actual injector, and then we're going to do that pretty much for the remaining. Now you don't really need to coat these in grease, like literally you just have a little grease on your fingers just like that, and then smear it. It's just, long as it's a little, you know, you got a paste of grease inside your fingers, then trust me, that'll be suffice. All right, so let's go ahead and get that. All right, cool. So now that we're done with that, what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to install our injectors first. I'm not going to lubricate the bottom. They don't need to be lubricated. So it doesn't matter where I put these. I'll just start off from the far right. And then we're going to go ahead and install this one. Then number 2. So you just literally insert these down until they go. And then obviously for the same as the rest, we're going to go ahead and do that for number 1. All right, so now that we got that in, if you wanted to, now you can clean up your area and double check anything. Do you need to add grease on this side? No, you don't. You just want to keep debris from entering your fuel rail and stuff, so I just keep it right here on a rag. So just keep that covered too in the meantime. All right, so let's see how I can show this as best as possible. All right, so for the fuel rail, we're gonna actually go nose diving. So you're gonna have to kind of pay attention to how this gets inserted. So let's lift up our harness. And what I'll do is I'll kind of swing this one in first a little bit, and then I'll start off a little bit over here. So I'm gonna bring the injector rail a little bit closer to the power steering pump, and then I'm gonna swing the actual fuel rail a little bit closer to that side. So what I want to do is, once you align everything just like this, we are going to be just the injectors should not fight. You can just wiggle them back and forth, and then they should seat in fine. Like, I mean, literally, they should go in without ease. I'm not even using any force to push these in. So you need to make sure that they all go in, all right, on their own. So once they're fully about almost seated in, what I'll do is I'll put like a little pressure on it, but usually I'll wiggle it back and forth and put, you know, just like a hand weight of just trying to put some pressure on it, but not too much. I just want to make sure that they get seated in properly. And then I'm going to go ahead and hand tighten this one all the way. Now wiggle the rail just a little bit, and then we'll go ahead and get our other 12, and then we'll thread that one in. And I'll use electric ratchet for that one. Now make sure your rail is fully seated, or pay attention to your rail as you're snugging it down so that you don't break the little plastic spacer that's for the fuel rail. I think that's called a fuel rail spacer on that, so just keep in mind. And then we'll go ahead and tighten this. Torque specs for those, I'll find that out right now in a little bit. I'll probably tell you all the torque specs in the end, so I'm not really worried about that right now. All right, so next what we're gonna go ahead and do, we are gonna start connecting on our injector rail. So first it's gonna be the gray one back there, then the brown one, and then gray, and then brown in the front. So it's color coded, so you can't mess this up. It's not rocket science. All right, so clip those in, make sure that they actually get clipped in. All right, so the only one that's probably not going to clip in for me is injector number 1, because it's broken. Still not popping out, so not really having an issue. Now if they do break on you, you can put some silicone on the actual injector. Just like put like a little tab that's like down below, and then from there the silicone will hold it in place from pulling it back. All right, now let's go ahead and connect our throttle body. So when connecting the throttle body, remember, I'm going to go ahead and reuse the gasket. The gasket's not that old. So one way to tell if the gasket's bad, if you have a flat gasket and you can't see it while looking at it, if you can't catch it with your finger, then you know it's done. You can't reuse it. If you needed to, you can put some silicone on it for the time being until you get the appropriate gasket. This is still good because I have a lip, so I can reuse this gasket. Some of you might say something, but trust me, I'm not gonna have an issue with this gasket. So this gasket's still good. All right, in that sense, before we put on the throttle body, let's go ahead and put on our fuel injector line. So let's go ahead and swing these. Just be careful that these don't flick in your eye. Now before putting on the actual injector line, you're actually gonna coat the actual pole with some grease. Now that'll keep that ring, the O-ring that's inside the actual fuel line, from rolling back, and it'll make it more easier to install. All right, so now we're gonna go ahead and do that for this one too as well. Make sure that they clip and they don't pull back. The green goes up on top, and then the yellow one is on the bottom of the rail, so just so you're aware. And then we're gonna get our throttle body and we'll swing it right over, and we'll go ahead and bolt that in. All right, so let's go ahead and thread in one at a time. So usually you want to kind of start off on the corners or whatever's easier to you. And then I would tighten down your throttle body in a X pattern. So it doesn't matter where you start as long as it's an X pattern. So you go top right, bottom left, top left, and then bottom right. So, and then again, I will get you the torque specs for those in a little bit. So for the throttle body, all the 10 millimeters, they are going to be 6 foot-pounds. So the throttle body, and then including the little intake that gets bolted up to the valve cover, and then for the fuel rail, that's bolted up to 9 foot-pounds. just so you're aware. So the little 2 bolts, so you got one right there and then one right here, again 9 foot-pounds. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and connect our throttle body connector. Make sure you hear it clip. Same thing for our vacuum switching valve. That one. Actually, this one's not gonna clip. Oh, there we go. Little tab got stuck. And then just making sure we are fine over here. So in the meantime, while we are doing this, sometimes you might need to open up the tabs to get the connector right in. Let's go ahead and get this right over here. Put that in, and then we'll connect this connector. There we have it. All right, so now we're gonna go ahead and put on our ignition coils, connect all those. All right, so we got those all clipped in. Let's double check everything. Now if you really wanted to, you can go like tap crank the car, make sure there's no leaks. I know there's not going to be any leaks. We'll go ahead and double check this in a little bit after I put everything, but now would be a great time to double check to see if you have any leaks going on. Now if you do that, you might throw a check engine light because you have some connectors disconnected. So when you prime this car on the on and off position, you should hear the fuel pump activate. If you don't hear it activate, what you can do is give it like a quick tap, just like a very light tap. You're not trying to start it, you're just trying to just tap it real quick and then back right off, and then that's pretty much it. And then you'll hear the car just crank like a hairline over, and then that should prime up the fuel system, and then from there you should see if there's any leaks. That would be a great time to actually do that. All right, so now let's go ahead and put on our intake box. All right, so we're gonna seat this down on the actual intake first side. And then we're gonna put this on the throttle body. We're gonna seat it down, make sure it's all the way. And then I'm gonna go ahead and put on our bolts for the intake box. I'm gonna connect this hose, might as well while I'm at it. And I'm gonna put this bolt back here since I'm already there. And those are to be tightened down to 71 inch foot-pounds. I'd just say snug them down just a little bit. You don't need to over torque them. And then I'm gonna go ahead and tighten down the actual throttle body. And those are supposed to be torqued down to 44 inch-pounds if you wanted to. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and get our harness, swing it right over, and then we're gonna get our PCV hose and just connect that in, make sure that's connected. And then squeeze the little tab and then swing it right down. We'll go ahead and connect our sensor connector. Then you would kind of clip this piece right in there. Obviously it doesn't work because it's broken. And then we'll connect our EGR connector. That's connected. And then we'll swing this hose down right over here. And we'll connect that. And that's pretty much it. Double check everything that's up around. Yeah, that's literally pretty much it. So coming in the car, we're gonna go ahead and put the key on the on position. I don't hear the fuel pump priming when putting it on the on position, so this is what I mean by giving it a quick tap. And right there, you can hear the fuel pump prime. And we're gonna do that a couple times. So the fuel pump, I think it needs to just rotate just a little bit just for the cam to actually pick up a signal. So if you let it rotate for like half a second, and that should build up pressure. All right, so now let's go ahead and check out to see if we have any fuel leaks. Do we have any fuel leaks? No, we do not, because if we did, you would be looking for anything white, like wet. So we don't see anything wet in that sense. So we are looking good. So injector rail looks fine. So we are successful in that sense. So now we're gonna go ahead and start the vehicle. The car might run a little rough, but that's what I mean by kind of tapping it just like that to prime it. So, and then once you have it, the car might just idle a little funny for the time being. Just give it a couple seconds to build up a little bit more pressure. All right, there we have it. And then we are gonna have to do an idle relearn procedure. Give it a couple seconds because we are reusing the old injectors. Have a little misfire going on. Alright, so the idle's getting better every time I rev it. I think just the injectors need to open up on that, and then we'll probably do the idle relearn. I can kind of feel it a little bit misfire. Other than that, that's pretty much it. We'll go ahead and double check that. We're just waiting for the new injectors to come in because the ones that customer got were the wrong ones, so on that sense. So we got the idle pretty set on. The injectors that we did put back on, they were a little clogged, or they were sticky, so that's why we replaced them in the first place, just because of the fuel consumption. But in the meantime, the remanufactured ones that we got, or that he got, was worse, so those were leaky. Now obviously we don't have that condition. Car idles nice and fine. I checked out the misfire, but after a little bit of idling, it countered itself and it fixed up. So probably the injectors just got unstuck. So here we're gonna go ahead and start it, and then there we have it, idling nice and fine, just where how I want it. Other than that, then you can do the idle relearn if you disconnected your battery. If you did do that, what you do is you wait until operating temperature. I would say drive it around for a little bit, at least 20 minutes of driving. If you do let it idle, you probably need to let it idle anywhere from 30 minutes to 40 minutes. And then you would put the emergency brake on, make sure it works, and then you would put the car in drive with no accessory lights on, nothing. The dome light needs to be off, and then you would have the door closed and then wait 5 to 10 minutes, and then the idle will correct itself. And then I'm not holding on the brake, so you can't be holding on that. You have to have the car in drive while the emergency brake is on. Now if your emergency brake doesn't work, go ahead and put some chucks in front of the wheel, so at least try to do it to all four and make sure that they're decent size thickness. And yeah, that's pretty much it. If this video helped you out, give it a thumbs up, comment down below if you have any questions, and hit that subscribe button for more upcoming videos in the future. And thanks for watching.